In this module, we are going to cover some theoretical grounds and alarms before getting into our vSphere web client and configuring alarms on some of our objects. So, an alarm can be defined as a notification in response to an event that occurred on an object within our inventory. So typically, you would have an alarm would have a name, description. We could have a type for that. Also, we would have a trigger or multiple triggers. And then we would have an action. Once this trigger was activated, an action what we want the alarm to do. So we basically could work with our default alarms that are built into vSphere or custom build our alarms. Since there are a lot of predefined alarms, you would want to seek one of them that suits your environment or multiple alarms that suit your environment. If the predefined alarm don't necessarily address the condition or event that you're trying to monitor, you can custom define your alarms. But once we get to the vSphere web client, we'll get into this. We'll create an alarm. We'll edit the default ones and take a look at the different triggers and the alarm actions. So with alarms, there are three severity levels. We have normal. This is represented in green. We have our warning, which is represented in yellow, and we have our alert. And these are represented in red. An alarm would have triggers also, and some action that acts on those triggers. So the triggers, they basically fall under two categories. First, we have the condition or state triggers. This monitor the current state or condition of a host, VM, or data store. An example of a condition or a state trigger would be, let's say the host is running low on memory. So we could have a trigger on this to say, okay, a host is using 95% of its memory. And then we would have an action after that. Maybe our action is to shut down the host or power off a VM. Okay. We also have event triggers. And this monitor events in response to operation in our vSphere inventory. So an example of this would be let's say the health of your hardware has changed, or maybe they are expiring licensing or inventory. These are just a couple of examples of our event triggers, but we'll get into this once we get to the vSphere web client. Also, what we could do is once we're creating our alarms, we could set up a single or multiple triggers for one particular alarm. We could also define multiple alarms for the same object. So let's just say we are setting up multiple triggers. We can trigger that alarm if one of the trigger condition is met, or if multiple are met. So we'll see that too once we start creating our alarms. I have a list here with the actions that are included in an alarm. So I'll just pull up my vSphere web client and let's get right into this. But these are basically some of the, it's not a complete list. These are some of the actions that we could perform once an alarm has been triggered. So let me pull up my vSphere web client here. Okay, so if I go into my inventory list here over on the left, and then come all the way to our vCenter server here, then click on my vCenter server. If I go to manage and then alarm definitions, this is the pre-configured list that comes with VMware vSphere. So this is the list here of pre-configured alarms. Notice over on the right, this is applied to this object, meaning this vCenter server and all objects below this. Okay, so this would apply to our data center, cluster, and our hosts and VMs coming downwards from this. Okay, we could change this. Once we edit one of these alarms, we could go into this and change the scope of this. Okay, so let's say we were applying an alarm directly on a resource pool, for example. So let me look for a resource pool that I have configured here. Okay, so let's say we were working with this production resource pool here. I was to right click here and go to alarm and define a new alarm here. And this would apply to the VMs that are hosted under this resource pool. Okay, so let's just go back to our vCenter server here. I want to set up my mail first for this, so let's just click on one of the alarm that's already defined here, and I'll edit this over on the right. If I come to action, we'll go through these different options just now, but if I come to action here, okay, once this alarm is triggered, the action that I want here, the default one is to send a notification email. Okay, so we have quite a few options here, but for this to work, we would need to set up our mail first at the vCenter server level. Okay, so let me just go back there and show you guys where we could configure that. So I'm still at my vCenter server level here, manage, and then if I come over to setting and edit this, we would have taken a look earlier at this. So I'll need to set this up first. So let's just say I had my mail server already configured in this environment. And then I'll just include an address here. Okay, so this would be a valid address that this alert would be coming from. Okay, so I just created one there. Also, what we could do is configure our SNMP receiver here too, so we could also have our vCenter server send a trap too. So if we need that in our alert or our alarm, we'll configure that too. So let me just hit OK there and come back to our alert definitions. So here we have a number of pre-configured utilization alarms as well as connectivity alarms. For utilization, we have we could do like host CPU usage, host memory utilization, or data store usage. So let me just move this over here and see what we have for hosts. Okay, so these are already pre-configured here. If I go to edit here, so we have a few options here. By default, this one is set for host. Okay, so once we create our new alarms, we could specify VM, or we could even change this. But this one is already configured with trigger for host CPU usage. So over on the right here, so the trigger is set to any. We could do any or all. So the operator for this trigger is above. Okay, so we could set this to above or below. So if the CPU utilization was to go above 75% for a period of 5 minutes, it would log a warning. And then if this was to continue at 90% for 5 minutes, then it would log a critical alert here. So let me just cancel out of that. Let's look for a data store, see what we have here. This is another one, data store usage. So all of these are usage alarms. We'll take a look at our connectivity ones in a little bit. If I come to edit over here too, notice here this is pointed to our data store. Over on trigger, it's already pre-configured with a data store disk usage. And similarly to our CPU, we have this one here for data store warning condition over 75% and 85 for critical. So generally, you'd want to monitor your utilization alarms before you actually run out of resources. Whereas our connectivity alarms, once these are triggered, it generally means something has already gone bad in your environment. So let's take a look at some of our connectivity ones we have here. Let's see what we have for network. Network. So we have a few of them for network here. Uplink redundancy, if we lost one of our link, this would be here. Let's take a look at a trigger for this one. So in this case here, we have multiple triggers for this particular alarm. We have 4 of them here actually. And then the action for this is to send a notification trap. Let's go ahead and create a new one from scratch. Let's create a new alarm. We did discuss the CPU ready value previously, so let's go ahead and create a alarm for our CPU ready. So let's call this VM. We could give this a description. So we're working with our actual virtual machine here. So I'll leave this to monitor a VM. I'll leave this to a specific condition or state. I'll leave the default there. Leave this checked for enable. So I'm just going to add one trigger here. So I don't need to set this to all. I'll just leave this to any. If I hit the plus here, plus sign, we have to add the trigger. Let me see. Okay, this is the one we're looking for, CPU ready time. So let's say I want to activate this trigger if the CPU ready time, the warning condition, if this gets to 1000. Okay, if this is above 1000 millisecond for 5 minutes, I want this to log a warning condition. And then over here, let's say this is 2000. This is 2000 for 5 minutes. Okay. Notice I'm still applying this at the vCenter server level, so any VM below this would take effect on this alarm. So let me just hit next here. So the action that I want. So once we have our mail configured correctly, we could send a notification email. Then you'll just plug in the address here. I don't have a mail server configured, so we really can't test this, but there are a lot of different options here. These were the same ones we had in the slide. Okay, so let's say if this happens, I need to suspend this VM. Okay, and then over on the right here, when this moved from normal to a warning, what I want is to do once a repeat. If it move again from warning to critical, I could set that here, and then when it moves back from critical to warning, and then warning to normal, and then I could repeat that action at the bottom here, like every 5 minutes, or just specify the time here. Once this is configured, okay, so I'm just going to cancel out here. Once this is configured and this alarm is triggered, it would show up in this little box in the corner here. But what I wanted to show you guys too, if we were to go to monitor here and then a triggered alarm, all the triggered alarms would show up here. Okay, these are the same that were triggered here too. So this is just another view for it. If I was to go ahead and acknowledge one of these alarm, it would move it over to acknowledge here. So basically, if I did not fix the root cause of this problem and I just acknowledge it, it would just grade this alarm out. So this really means we haven't fixed the root cause of it, so it's still here. If I was to go and right click here and reset this to green, without fixing the problem, it would go away from this list. Also, what I can do is if I click the alarm directly here, this would take me straight to the object. So in this case, it's ESXi2. So it will take me under ESXi2, under monitor, and then the issue for the trigger alarm. So this is just for this particular object. So we could go back here and get the full view of all the triggered alarms. So this is basically all I wanted to discuss with alarms. Thank you for joining me here. In our next module, we'll just get into the theoretical part of login before configuring a login for our vSphere environment.